Hi everyone, this is Ashley the Techie Ellenboss with Skyhouse Herb School and Apothecary. Today we'll be looking at addiction, what is addiction, and some herbs that can be helpful allies. I wanted to start by sharing a little bit of my own story with addiction and giving you an idea of what has helped me and some of my family members through addictive, troubling times. And also wanted to tell you some helpful ways of looking at addiction that I found to be really, really useful. The first thing is that I read an article by a psychotherapist who was talking about his work in addiction therapy. And he said, we really shouldn't call it addiction. He said, there's another term that I have found to be more descriptive of what's actually happening. And so he coined the phrase compulsive comfort-seeking behavior disorder. Compulsive comfort-seeking behavior disorder. So if we really think about what addiction is and then think about this phrase, it makes it, for me at least, it helps me to understand addiction a little bit more. So if it's a compulsive thing, then it's something that's kind of beyond our control. It's something that our body is reaching for. And James Snow, one of my herbal teachers, he worked with a population in the on the West Coast on a Native American reservation, and he worked with a lot of alcohol addiction. And he said one thing that you have to realize is that people are doing their best to try to find comfort, and they're doing all people across the world are looking for ways to stop their own suffering. And so if we think about addiction in this way, these people, or maybe ourselves, we've found something that temporarily fills that void or fills that need. And so we found a substance or an activity even that has brought us out of our suffering. So I just want to say that because we have to be careful that we don't shame people or blame people for addiction, because it's not something that they have control over. It's a compulsive activity. And it's something that they're doing to seek comfort. It's something that they're doing to try to find ease and find some relief from whatever it is they're going through. And then behavior disorder. So it's a behavior. It's something that repeats. It's out of their control. It's compulsive. It's doing something to help them stop their own suffering, but it's a behavior. So it's not something that's going to change overnight. And within my own family and seeing addiction and how it works, it's nothing that someone else can say, you should stop doing this and here are the 10 reasons why. It's not a logical process. It's something that is a behavior that's been learned and that's been repeated and that has worked for the person. And even when it gets to the point where they've hit bottom and it seems like, how could this possibly be something that you see working? It's probably the best thing that they've found out of all of the other things they've tried. And that's what they've tried so far. So when we think about addiction, we also need to think about, we need a new behavior. We need something to replace the behavior that they've used to try to find that comfort. So most addiction facilities, and myself, I'm a member of Al-Anon because I grew up in an alcoholic household. A lot of this, the core fundamental work that you do when you're working with addiction is seeking help from a higher power. And I don't think that I would be as far in my own recovery if I had not had this as my guiding principle, that there is something larger than me that knows better than I do what's going on. And the best thing I can do is turn it over into God's hands, or you could call it the universe or spirit or source. The word doesn't matter. It's just the idea that there's something larger and more intelligent than you that can help. And all we have to do is just be open to its help. And if we're someone who is living with, or someone who is, we're living with, or we have a family member who is in active addiction, then one of the best things we can do for them is just respect their autonomy and their own soul's journey, and not try to guilt them, bully them, pressure them into their own recovery. In my own family, that did not work. And so the best thing that I can do is just respect their doing the best they can and love them and support them in healthy ways and try to be a healthy model for how I deal with my own issues with how I seek comfort. So I just wanted to give that as a preface because I think to me that spiritual component is essential when you're trying to get out of an addictive cycle, because the behavior that is cyclical in your own head that says, I need to take care of this, I need this substance, needs to be replaced by, I don't know what to do, I'm feeling very vulnerable, and God, please step in and help me. Like, give me some guidance. Like, I need you to help me, not the substance. And so that behavioral switch can be very, very critical in helping you rewire your brain and rewire how you uh, react to those triggers that happen in life. So that's a little bit of the of a background and a helpful way to think about it. Now, in my own journey, personally, I have a chocolate addiction, and it's kind of embarrassing because, here I am, an herbalist, and, I'm pretty healthy, but get me around chocolate and it's like game over. I just, I can eat probably about 2 of those 50-ounce bars in a day. My running average was 1 bar of dark chocolate a day, and I would just go. And I would find that it was whenever I was a little bit bored, a little anxious, or feeling a little overwhelmed, I would go and take another piece. And for me, chocolate ends up being very harmful because it has caffeine, which is not good for my body. It makes my skin break out. It makes my even though it doesn't have a lot of sugar, it makes my blood sugar levels go up and down, and then my moods start to get a little bit out of control. And the further and deeper I get into it, the more I sort of have this like I don't care attitude, and the I don't care attitude then brings me into other behaviors that are also very unhealthy. So I can't eat chocolate. I just can't, because a little bit triggers me. So what I found that has helped me, number one, has been my spiritual practices and daily prayer and asking for support, but also a few little tricks that I've learned along the way to help me with that particular behavior. And so if you struggle with especially sweet, like sugar addiction or chocolate, or things that are maybe more of a food type of addiction, then peppermint can be a really important ally. So peppermint oil has been shown to help curb appetite, and also it helps the brain to focus. So sometimes when we're reaching for that substance, it's because we're looking for focus, and chocolate will do that. Sugar will give us that rush. So if we're looking for that focus and something to sort of break the pattern we're in, peppermint is just hands down a great herb. So there's a number of ways you can use peppermint in this case. A tea is a really nice way. You can just brew a cup of peppermint tea. My favorite time to do this is right after a meal, because it's usually after I eat food that I want something sweet afterwards, or it's in that middle of the day crash period where I'm going to reach for sugar. I go for a cup of tea. Another thing you can do with peppermint is you can diffuse the oil in your room, and that can be another way of getting that peppermint into the environment. And I don't recommend taking peppermint essential oil internally. I know some people do that, but I just don't think it's a good idea because it can mess with your gut flora. And we really need our gut flora for all sorts of other things, including mood regulation. So tea, also just if you have the fresh plant around, I have it in my garden, and I keep a few little stalks in some water on my windowsill. And so when I'm in the kitchen, sometimes I'll just take a little fresh leaf and put it in my mouth and chew on it. And again, that gives me something oral that I'm doing, and it gives me that hit of kind of clearing the air. And peppermint it's a very clearing herb. It's very much like a mental reset. So try it, see what you think, see if that helps. Another herb that has shown some great use in research is gentian. And gentian, we use the root. And this herb is a very strong bitter. And it's been shown, there was a study that was done in 2002, that it actually helps to reverse overexpression of the D2 D2 dopamine receptor in the brain. And so this is something that causes that is overexpressed in people that have addictive, have addiction in their past. And so in the study in 2002, they found that it really helped with a number of different receptors associated with addiction. And it actually, people who were in a hospital that were coming off of opioids actually used less morphine when they were taking Gentian. So it help them withdraw more smoothly and without as much morphine. So that's that's pretty powerful. I also think about the way that bitters work on we have bitter receptor sites in our brain, in our mouth, in our gut, pretty much all over the body, in the heart. So when we take in bitter, which is something that's not in the typical American diet, it does something really good for our psychology and something really good for our physiology. And we know that it can help with depression. We know bitters can help with hormone regulation. Bitters definitely help with digestion. We know about that for sure with the use of aperitifs and digestive bitters before and after meals. So, so Gentian is an herb. I would recommend taking this one as a tincture because it's so bitter. Like you don't want to be chewing on the root. It's going to be like too intense. So you can usually buy Gentian on its own in a tincture, and you just need a few drops, maybe 2 to 3 drops directly on your tongue. If that's too much, 2 to 3 drops in a little bit of water, and take that several times a day. And if you are having digestive stuff, you can take it before meals. So that's Gentian, and I think that's a really good one. Another thing that's interesting about Gentian is in the Flower Speaks language. It's called it's the herb of, or it's associated with flies. So it's it's associated with the energy of the fly because flies are attracted to Gentian. And usually you think of like flies being attracted to things that are dying and decaying, but flies are actually attracted to the Gentian flower, and it's called the flower of doubt. And so, you think what would ever pollinate the stinky plant? Well, a fly would. And I think also addiction is a lot about doubt. We doubt ourselves. We often doubt greater power than ourselves. So there's also this, I think, nice connection between the spirit of Gentian and the work that it does in the body. Another great herb that my father used when he was coming off of cigarettes, I made him a blend. I called it his wingman, because the thing about smoking is it's such an addictive pattern. So there are a number of herbs that actually weakly bind the nicotine receptors in the brain. And so these are herbs like lobelia and skullcap are the 2 ones that I use. So I made him a blend of a tincture, and it was lobelia, skullcap, and milky oats. And I told him, take this. And I think, you know what? Actually, I added Gentian in there. That's right, because I made it super bitter. Because I knew that bitter also snaps you out of like that it just wakes you up. And I remember one thing my dad saying when because I told him, I said, keep it in your pocket. Every time you want a cigarette, just squirt it in your mouth. And he said the taste was so god awful that I couldn't imagine sticking a cigarette in my mouth after that terrible taste. And I was like, yes, good. That's a good thing. It broke the pattern, and it made the thought and taste of cigarettes unpalatable, which is good. That's what you want. And it also, again, these herbs, both lobelia and skullcap, have that sort of similar effect that nicotine does, where it's both a nervous system stimulant and a nervous system relaxant, which is why people like it, because it boosts you up, but it also relaxes you down at the same time. So these herbs can fill that gap too. And then the last plant I wanted to talk about is rose. And rose is one that I just think of as like the ultimate fill the void herb. Rose is a medicine of the heart, and we know this because when we are giving a loved one, like a Valentine, or showing our love to someone, we often express it in what flower? But a rose. And so roses are a longtime symbol of love. They're a longtime symbol of heart. And they actually have a number of bioflavonoids that are really good for the heart and help to strengthen the arteries and the veins, and also help improve cardiac function. So rose is just an incredible medicine that I would recommend for addiction. And this is any addiction, even if it's addictive thoughts, you're having addictive thoughts or obsessive thoughts about something. Rose tea is just such a nice, gentle way to bring some of that soothing, comforting heart medicine into your body. And the way that I like to brew rose is I like to do a cold infusion. So what you do is you just would take maybe like a teaspoon of rose petals, and make sure they're organic, because otherwise they can have chemicals and that's no good. So a teaspoon of dried organic rose petals in about maybe 2 cups of water, and you can use like a jar. And then I like to do a little teaspoon, like maybe half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And if you have marshmallow root, you could do a half a teaspoon of marshmallow root or marshmallow powder, and then mix that up and let that sit for about 8 hours. And the rose will be the dominant flavor. And because you're doing it in cold water, you're not going to get a lot of the drying qualities, which you may or may not want. If you are very damp and moist and you have maybe leaky gut, then you might want to do it in warm to hot water, because that will draw those tannins out. But otherwise, if you do cold water, you're going to get this very light pink color, a little bit of that sweetness, a lot of that rose flavor, with very little of the astringency like you get from tea and things that have tannins. So that's one blend you can do. If you don't have the other herbs, you can certainly just do a few teaspoons in a few cups of water and let that sit again for, ideally about 8 hours to get the most out of it. If you're doing cold water, if you're doing hot water, you can let it sit maybe just 15-20 minutes. Maybe 15 minutes would be enough, and then you strain it and then you drink it. You can also use rose as an ally, just as a flower. So next time you go to the store, pick yourself up a half dozen roses and place them around your house. Place one on your desk, one on your kitchen table, one in the bathroom, and just let the energy and the medicine of rose as the whole plant itself also remind you of love and self-love. And what beautiful creator made the rose? It wasn't you, it wasn't me, it was some larger force created this magnificent flower that has thorns of protection to protect its vulnerable places, but also gives this incredible aroma and this most gorgeous display of petals. So, when we see the rose, we should also be reminded that there is a creator that is benevolent and good and is looking out for us. We just need to remember that source on a regular basis. So I hope this has been helpful. Please write your own comments into the comment box. Let me know other herbs that you may have used for working with addiction in your own self or with your clients. And I look forward to hearing more from you. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day.